What if I told you that the greatest story of resilience in rock history has been hiding in plain sight for over 4 decades? Imagine standing on stage night after night while your spine slowly fuses together, vertebra by vertebra. Imagine creating iconic guitar riffs that defined a generation while battling pain so intense it would leave most people bedridden. Now imagine doing something that shocked everyone, rising up at age 71, when most musicians have long faded away, to create the music you always dreamed of making. This isn't fiction. This is the extraordinary true story of Mick Mars, the forgotten hero of Mötley Crüe, who refused to let disease, betrayal, or time steal his voice. The year was 1954, and a small 3-year-old boy named Robert Allen Deal stood mesmerized at a county fair in Indiana. On stage, a country singer named Skeeter Bond performed under the bright lights, guitar gleaming in his hands. That single moment planted a seed that would grow into an unshakable certainty. When little Robert returned home that night, he looked at his parents and declared with absolute conviction, "This will be my life." Born on May 4, 1951, in Terre Haute, Indiana, Robert came from struggle. His family barely scraped by, and when they moved to Garden Grove, California seeking better opportunities, they brought their financial hardships with them. Robert grew up in a cramped house with 4 siblings, where privacy was a luxury they couldn't afford. But when he received his first guitar at age 12, a cheap instrument most serious musicians would have dismissed, he discovered something money couldn't buy: purpose. While other teenagers chased typical adolescent pursuits, Robert vanished into his bedroom for hours, teaching himself to play by ear. He studied Elvis Presley records obsessively, memorizing every note from surf rock pioneers like Dick Dale, until his fingers bled. His dedication bordered on obsession, but even as his musical skills developed, his body began sending troubling signals. Sharp pains shot through his lower back at just 14 years old, the first warning signs of a disease that would become his lifelong adversary. Still, music pulled him forward. He joined his first band, the Jades, covering Beatles songs at high school dances and small local venues, switching from bass to lead guitar, when he realized that's where his true talent lay. Life threw another devastating challenge at 18, when a factory accident nearly destroyed his hand. For most aspiring musicians, this would have been the end of the dream, a clear sign to pursue something more practical. Instead, Robert made an extraordinary choice that defined his character. He quit his job, dropped out of school, and committed entirely to music. The pain in his spine intensified with each passing month, yet night after night, he stood on small stages across Southern California, his face contorted with agony, but his fingers never missing a note. This wasn't just about becoming a musician anymore, it was a battle against his own body, one he refused to lose. The 1970s proved brutal for the struggling guitarist. He bounced between bands like White Horse, playing blues rock in grimy bars and clubs for barely enough money to eat. When White Horse decided to chase disco trends to secure better-paying gigs, Robert walked away immediately. He understood something fundamental about himself. He wasn't born to follow fashions. He needed something authentic, something fierce that reflected the intensity burning inside him. In a moment of complete reinvention, he shaved his mustache, dyed his hair jet black, and transformed his entire persona. Robert Allen Deal disappeared forever, and from his ashes emerged Mick Mars, a name that would eventually be etched into rock history. In April 1980, Mars placed a simple but defining ad in the Recycler newspaper: "Loud, rude, aggressive guitarist available." Within days, 2 ambitious young musicians named Nikki Sixx and Tommy Lee called him. When they met, they were struck by Mars's cold, mysterious demeanor, his piercing gaze, and most importantly, his crushingly heavy guitar sound. During their first jam session, Mars suggested the name Mötley Crüe, recalling someone once describing his previous band as a motley-looking crew. That name, combined with Mars's thunderous guitar tone, became the foundation upon which rock history would be built. When Mars's guitar roared to life during those early rehearsals, the others immediately recognized they'd found the missing piece of their puzzle, a man already in his early 30s, visibly limping from spinal pain, standing among three hungry 20-somethings with stars in their eyes. Mötley Crüe's rise through the Los Angeles rock scene was meteoric. Their 1981 debut album Too Fast for Love ignited the Sunset Strip. While other bands focused on flash and theatrics, Mars's thick cold guitar tone gave Mötley Crüe a musical weight that set them apart from countless imitators. Their true breakthrough came with 1983's Shout at the Devil, where Mars crafted darker, heavier sounds that seamlessly blended traditional hard rock with heavy metal's aggression. Songs like Looks That Kill and Too Young to Fall in Love showcased his remarkable ability to create memorable riffs that could fill arenas with just a handful of perfectly chosen notes. Between 1985 and 1989, Mötley Crüe ascended to their commercial peak. Theater of Pain featured the hit ballad Home Sweet Home, where Mars's restrained playing created an emotional depth that perfectly balanced the band's wild image. Girls, Girls, Girls pushed their bad boy reputation to new extremes, with Mars delivering dirty, gritty blues-influenced guitar work that became the soundtrack to strip clubs worldwide. By 1989, Dr. Feelgood topped the Billboard charts, with Mars showcasing his technical mastery on anthems like Kickstart My Heart and soulful, nuanced playing on Without You. The album's success wasn't just commercial validation, it was proof that Mars's musical vision had always been the heart of Mötley Crüe's sound. Throughout their rise to fame, Mick Mars wasn't just playing guitar, he was the musical foundation holding everything together, while his bandmates spiraled into drugs, alcohol, and headline-making scandals. In interviews, Nikki Sixx and Tommy Lee dominated attention with outrageous stories, while Vince Neil became the recognizable face plastered across MTV and magazine covers. Mars remained in the background, the shadow figure transforming their chaos into powerful music both on stage and in the studio. But this imbalance wasn't just about personality differences. It reflected a deeper truth about Mars's daily reality. Behind the scenes, Mars fought a personal war that few outside his inner circle understood. At 17, he had been diagnosed with ankylosing spondylitis, a chronic form of arthritis that gradually fuses the vertebrae of the spine. What began as persistent backaches evolved into sleepless nights and mornings where simply standing upright required every ounce of his strength. The disease slowly deformed his body, causing him to hunch forward and actually shrink nearly 3 inches from his original height. Yet Mars never spoke about the pain on stage. When the lights came on, he stood there, head bowed low, clutching his guitar like it was the replacement spine for a body that was quietly falling apart bone by bone. Every tour brought new tortures. Long flights in cramped airplane seats, back-to-back shows in different cities, endless hours on uncomfortable tour buses, each a special kind of nightmare for a man whose spine was literally calcifying. While his bandmates drowned themselves in the wild parties and excesses that became rock legend, Mars retreated to hotel rooms alone, battling pain that no amount of medication could fully control. He wasn't close to Neil, didn't bond with Lee, and shared little with Sixx beyond their musical connection. For over 20 years, Mars was essentially a solitary figure within the very band he helped build, united with them on stage, but separated by an experience none of them could truly comprehend. In his darkest moments, depression consumed him like a shadow that wouldn't lift. He drank heavily just to numb the constant pain, eventually becoming dependent on opioid painkillers that offered temporary relief but created new problems. In a particularly desperate night, a moment he rarely discusses, Mars walked into the ocean intending to end his suffering permanently, only to wake up soaked and freezing on the shore, wondering if he was still alive or already a ghost haunting his own life. In the 1990s, his condition deteriorated to the point where he underwent hip replacement surgery. The physical pain improved slightly, but the emotional isolation remained unaddressed. Mars was the odd one out, the quiet man, the shadow of Mötley Crüe, even though it was his guitar that truly carried the band's musical soul for decades. Mars' personal life mirrored the struggles of his professional journey. Before Mötley Crüe formed, he married his teenage sweetheart Sharon Deal and had 2 children, a son named Les Paul, after the legendary guitarist, and a daughter named Stormy, who would later inherit her father's battle with ankylosing spondylitis. Financial hardships and constant touring destroyed the marriage, with Sharon eventually leaving and taking their children with her. The situation became so dire that at one point, Mars faced immediate arrest for unpaid child support if police pulled him over between shows. Friends from that era recall creating elaborate schemes just to help him avoid being detained while trying to perform. During those chaotic years, he also fathered another son, Eric, through a brief relationship with a local singer, creating yet another family connection he struggled to maintain. As Mötley Crüe found fame and fortune in the 1980s, Mars' personal instability continued. In 1990, he married backing vocalist Emmy Cannon, but this relationship also collapsed after just 4 years amid band tensions and his worsening health problems. It wasn't until 2007, after more than half his life had passed in pain and loneliness, that Mars found unexpected stability with Swiss model Serena Sommerhalder, who was more than 30 years his junior. They met after a show in Zurich when Serena was just 22, mysteriously drawn to Mars's quiet intensity and the depths she recognized behind his dark sunglasses. They married in 2013, and for the first time in his tumultuous life, Mars had someone by his side who cared for him beyond fame, fortune, or what he could provide, someone who saw the man beneath the shadow. After 4 grueling decades of perseverance, everything changed in 2022. Mars, now 71 years old and physically unable to endure the brutal demands of touring, made the difficult but necessary decision to withdraw from the road. He made it explicitly clear to his bandmates that he wasn't quitting Mötley Crüe. He was still ready to record new music, perform at stationary events, and participate in anything that didn't require the physical torture of constant travel. Just 24 hours later, without warning or consultation, Mötley Crüe announced to the press that Mars had retired and would be replaced by John 5. No discussion, no negotiation, no recognition, just a cold announcement erasing 41 years of loyalty and contribution with a single press release. Mars suddenly realized the truth. He'd been pushed aside like an outdated piece of equipment, and this time, he refused to remain silent about the betrayal. In early 2023, he filed a lawsuit against his former bandmates, accusing them of conspiring to remove him from his business interests, and forcing him to sell his 25% ownership stake in the band's business entities at a fraction of its true value. Mars demanded access to financial records he claimed had been deliberately hidden from him for years. The lawsuit revealed shocking allegations that rocked the rock community. Mars accused SHOCKS of not actually playing bass live during tours, with tracks pre-recorded, and claimed both Neil's vocals and Lee's drums relied heavily on backing tracks, while Mars played his parts authentically night after night. According to court documents, SHOCKS had orchestrated the effort to declare Mars unfit to perform, specifically to seize his stake in the band's lucrative business. Beyond the financial betrayal, Mars faced personal humiliation from people he once considered brothers. He was openly mocked for his age, his deteriorating health condition, even his private relationships. The band that once promised to stand together against the world had become the very force trying to erase his existence and contribution. Mötley Crüe's legal team countered that under previous agreements, Any member withdrawing from touring automatically forfeited their share of touring revenues and related activities. But for Mars, the lawsuit wasn't fundamentally about money. It was about dignity and recognition for a legacy he'd literally sacrificed his body to build. After months of bitter legal battles, Mars won a partial victory when the court ordered Mötley Crüe to pay his legal fees for deliberately delaying document release, and affirmed his right to access comprehensive business records. But leaving Mötley Crüe wasn't the end of Mick Mars's story. It was the beginning of his most important chapter. Free from commercial expectations, image constraints, and market trends, Mars retreated to his private studio in Nashville to create something he hadn't been able to accomplish in over 40 years. A pure Mars solo album, undiluted and uncensored by outside influences. On February 23, 2024, The Other Side of Mars was officially released through his own independent label. The title itself was a powerful statement. This was a side of him the public had never been allowed to see before, the musical vision that had always lived within him. The album took nearly 4 years of painstaking work to complete, with Mars personally involved in every aspect from initial songwriting to final mastering. He surrounded himself with trusted musicians who respected his vision. Paul Taylor, former keyboardist for Winger and Alice Cooper, co-wrote several tracks. Jacob Bunton handled most lead vocals with emotional intensity, and Ray Luzier from Korn powered the rhythm section on several songs with his distinctive drumming. Produced by Michael Wagoner, who had worked with Mötley Crüe during their earliest days, the album maintained a raw, authentic spirit that major labels might have polished away. Musically, The Other Side of Mars refused to be confined by hair metal formulas or nostalgic expectations. Mars boldly blended hard rock foundations with blues authenticity and touches of modern industrial textures. Songs like Loyal to the Lie and Right Side of Wrong proved his riff-writing abilities, remained razor-sharp, heavy and atmospheric, yet deeply emotional, in ways Mötley Crüe had rarely explored. Ballads like Memories revealed a reflective, vulnerable side, filled with the wisdom that can only come from decades of surviving life's harshest challenges. Throughout the album, Mars's guitar tone remained unmistakable, thick, dark, and profound in ways that younger guitarists could only hope to achieve. His solos prioritized emotional expression over technical flash, which Mars always understood was the true measure of musical greatness. In rare interviews promoting the album, Mars stated simply, "I'm not trying to sound like anyone else at this point in my life. I don't have anything to prove to anyone. I just want to play the way I've always wanted to, honestly and without apologies." The album received enthusiastic praise from rock critics, many calling it one of the most authentic works a veteran artist had released in years, not just a collection of songs, but a statement of artistic integrity from a man who had earned every note through suffering and perseverance. With The Other Side of Mars, Mick Mars finally achieved what had eluded him for 4 decades, telling his own unfiltered story, controlling his musical destiny, no longer hiding in anyone's shadow or bearing pain in silence for someone else's dream. Today Mars lives quietly with Serena in their Nashville home, far from the entertainment industry's relentless chaos. He spends his time writing new music and recording, focusing on his health while continuing to create without the pressure of spotlights or deadlines. In early 2025, he confirmed work had already begun on his second solo album, partnering with renowned engineer Chris Collier to create an even more ambitious musical statement that builds on the foundation of his solo debut. Although his relationship with Mötley Crüe remains complicated by ongoing legal issues, Mars hasn't completely closed the door on potential reconciliation or future collaborations, but his priority remains his solo work. A creative journey where he finally holds the reins of his artistic expression. Mick Mars's legacy extends far beyond heavy riffs and emotional solos. He was instrumental in shaping Mötley Crüe's distinctive sound, keeping them musically anchored through their most turbulent years, when they might otherwise have drifted into pure spectacle without substance. His influence touches countless musicians across multiple generations of hard rock and metal, who recognized the emotional depth behind his playing. But perhaps most importantly, Mars's story stands as a testament to extraordinary resilience, triumphing over disease, aging, betrayal and industry disposability, to continue creating authentic art entirely on his own terms. He was never the one grabbing headlines or commanding center stage, but it was Mars and his relentless guitar who provided Mötley Crüe's musical soul for over 4 decades of rock history. Now in his 70s, when many would have retreated into bitter retirement, he continues writing, playing and moving forward, on legs weakened by illness, but supported by unwavering determination. Without seeking applause or pity, he quietly forges his own path, a journey where honesty and artistic integrity remain uncompromised despite every obstacle. The life of Mick Mars offers a powerful truth too often forgotten in our celebrity-obsessed culture. True strength isn't found in those who scream the loudest or stand in the brightest spotlight. It lives in those who endure when quitting would be justified, who create despite crippling pain, who remain true to themselves when compromise would be easier. In a world that celebrates overnight success and worships youth, Mick Mars reminds us that sometimes the most inspiring stories belong to those who fight the longest battles in the quietest ways. So the next time life tries to break you, remember the man who stood on stage for 40 years while his spine fused together, who created timeless music while his body betrayed him, who found his truest voice at an age when most have nothing left to say. Remember Mick Mars and ask yourself, if he could rise after being knocked down so many times, what might you achieve if you refused to stay down after your own falls? The stage of your life awaits. It's never too late to play the music that's always lived inside you.